Welcome back, everyone. Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back and welcome to the second and final day of the 12th edition of the Arctic Future Symposium organized by the International Polar Foundation. I'm still Nicola Vanuka since yesterday, no change there. As yesterday, we have an in-house, in-person crowd. We also have people online, and I would already like to thank you for your participation, the questions you will ask, and the debate that will follow the different panel discussions. Yesterday, we had some interesting exchanges, mostly about governance in the Arctic region. We had no less than 19 panelists and 4 keynote speakers. And as I said yesterday, most of the keywords, some of the concepts that came back a lot were collaboration, cross-border exchanges. And then there was also one of our last speakers about the human connection that was so important. So today we have 3 panel discussions on 3 different topics. And as yesterday, I would like again the people here to feel free to ask any questions, and the people online as well through the Zoom application. You can submit your questions and they will go to the moderator. So we have, as I said, 3 different panel discussions today. One at 3:15 with Mike Sfraga, one of our keynote speakers, by the way, yesterday, who will moderate the panel on Arctic resilience. At 5 p.m. we have Mats here, who was a panelist himself yesterday. And Mats will moderate a discussion on sustainability and business development in the Arctic region. But first, now, the first panel discussion will be moderated by Mrs. Sveinung Eikeland, the Vice Chair of the Arctic University of Norway. And Mrs. Eikeland will lead the panel on the topic of youth, demographics, and capacity building, a view to the future. So I would like you to enjoy today as much as you enjoyed yesterday, I hope. And Mr. Eikeland, if you're online, I give you the floor.
Thank you. I suppose I am online. I can see myself. And I suppose you hear me?
Very well, Mr. Eikeland.
Fine. Well, again, welcome to the section and to this panel on Arctic youth. And I also think I will thank the organizers for organizing or addressing this issue. It is, as the headline tells us, about demographic and thereby also about future capacities in Arctic regions to benefit from global developing processes, but also about these processes and that these should be governed also by Arctic communities. I'm Sveinung Eikeland. I'm a Vice Rector of the Arctic University of Norway, as you said. My university is a core part of the University of Arctic and also in this group of Finnish, Swedish, and Norwegian northern universities in Arctic 5. I'm settled in Alta. We are about 20,000 inhabitants in the northernmost county of Norwegian Arctic regions. Together with me in the panel are 5 participants representing voices from youths in different Arctic regions. A short introduction from me first. I think by organizing this panel, the symposium confirms that what Arctic inhabitants are always reminding in international conferences. There are living people in Arctic. And by this reminding, we address the Arctic as homelands for a population. Arctic is more than ice, and is ice also melting, and wilderness. And yesterday, as you said, the governance part of the conference demonstrated Arctic as attractive and increasing attractive for states and for industries. My session in many ways take the opposite perspective. In spite of this global interest and in spite of developing functioning Arctic institutions, the Arctic experiences a decreasing attractiveness from youths. And I also think, when also going back to yesterday, most of these problems are excellent analysis in this Arctic report on demographics for the Arctic Council, where gender is a central part, highlighted yesterday by Embla Eir Oddsdottir in the last panel yesterday. And when we read this, we often from my part of Arctic or from eastern part of Arctic, focusing on youths in decreased embedding in Arctic communities, resulting in outmigration, new gender imbalances, and low birth rates. Much about a type of abstract homelessness, most among women. But as the panel and the report demonstrate, low attractiveness is also due to concrete living and welfare problems among people living in Arctic. In this perspective, homelessness for many can be a reality and quite concrete. And as also the panel will demonstrate, Indigenous people rooted in Arctic for generations give up preventing their livelihood and culture for global pressures, in spite of being protected by global laws. These issues need, as the panel will demonstrate, a broad policies initiatives targeting a manifold of problems. And the policies have to be grounded in relevant analysis conducted close to the people in the Arctic and in different parts of the Arctic. If the demographic and the socio-demographic process continues, as Arctic as a homeland will not benefit for actual opportunities in future global developing. Arctic can become a frontier more and more strange for us native. Then I go to the panel. The panel will be a type of reporting or elaborating reporting from different regions of Arctic, and it's here from 5 regions. And where I'm sitting, I will start in the east, in Lapland, in Finland, Martin Riipi. As a young county governor, you are also the member of the panel that are most close to the policies level, especially on regional level. So give us a short report from Lapland. What are you doing and what is your experience of the problem? So please, Martin.
Thank you. Greetings from Lapland and Rovaniemi. Young and young. I'm 46 now, so maybe not in the total definition of a young, but started in this position 8 years ago. And as a previous jobs in my past life, I've been also a youth counselor, so I know something about the youth policy and the challenges inside that. In my office, we are responsible of regional development in Lapland. In order to do that, we form regional development program every 4 years, where we agree those principles that we are going to put effort on, both on political influencing and also by the using and allocating cohesion funding in our region. And actually it was about 3 or 4 years ago when we raised up demographics as our biggest challenge in the future of Lapland's development. The history behind that is of course much longer. Actually, it was last time 1993 when the Lapland's population was increasing. Since that, every year it has been decreasing, and except last year, which was the COVID year, then we had actually a positive sign, and the population was increasing, and much of it was actually by the increase of remote working, and also people moving to a destination that they consider to be safe, where distances are easy to keep, and also the nature is very close. So that's a very interesting megatrend, what's going to happen in the future when we hopefully get out of this pandemic. But still, this development is not enough. Actually, I'm very worried about how we can in the future, for example, keep up our public services, social and healthcare services, civil services here in Lapland with these demographics. And also, if you think about the development of our industries, both tourism and forestry, and also our circular economy and metallurgy cluster, we've got a lot of investments coming on, and the lack of a labor force is a critical in those brand of industries. So when we think about the situation, I think that still the demographics and how we keep changing this wheel of development is the key issue for the future of Lapland and Lappish people. So that's shortly about me and how this challenge shows in my office.
Thank you, Mika. I will maybe ask you a bit or to elaborate some of this. From my figures, many migrate out of Lapland, and 90% of the people migrating out of Lapland is youth. Why is that the situation? How do you understand that?
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and we've been doing a lot of research behind that, and also some efforts to tackle that challenge. What we've been doing is to increase the places to study in Lapland, so the young people shouldn't necessarily to move. So there would be sort of a path from elementary school to even the university level here in Lapland. I guess that I'm quite confident that if you think about the Lapland's educational system, we've got a very high level university here. We got very high level applied university of applied sciences here, and second stage education possibilities. So what we've been thinking is that of course there's a lot of things that we can't actually influence by, for example, increasing the level of educational services, because there's a quite big mega trend on among the young people, and it's about the way they think life, and many times they think life that it's somewhere else, it's in the big cities, and the southern part of Finland and abroad. They can have much more different choices, and it's very hard to tackle that kind of thing, because it's a mental thing. It's a question about attitudes, and it's also a question about how they see their home cities, home municipalities, home region. How I've been thinking it as a former youth councillor, I have a sort of a philosophy that actually it's our obligation to put our youngs out and let them go, let them learn, let them live, but same time make things here in Lapland sort of easy to come back when the phase in the life goes, for example, in the family phase and seeking for a permanent job and so on. So that means that we have to have a good brand or good image. We have to have services. We have to have cultural or sports services. We have to have good transport connections. We have to have sort of a overall view that Lapland is a good place to come back. And that's one of those key issues that we are putting effort in the next years in our development.
Yes, and I think what you're saying are very high relevance for many of us. We are developing decentralized higher education systems, and people and youngsters still moving. So that. But one last question in this phase from me. It's about the indigenous people and urbanization. In Finland, there's a situation that indigenous people are moving out of of remote areas or their areas in Lapland where they have some protection or some rights to places or to urban areas when they don't have that, and then they are discussing some homelessness and so on. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, nowadays the biggest Sami city is Helsinki. There's the biggest Sami community inside the Helsinki by population, and it's a megatrend that actually same kind of megatrend as I described as common is also in the young people of indigenous people, the Sami people. There's of course a lot of things that make young people difficult to see the future in the traditional home area, and things that they feel that are threat to their traditional livelihoods. For example, the possible mining projects, plans about to build the railroad and so on. They build a lot of pictures that there's no room for traditional livelihoods in the future, and that's very sad, because how we feel is that the Sami homeland should be mainly for the Sami people and their traditional livelihoods, and of course this development creates a lot of difficult situations. For example, the future of the Sami language. When young people move on the bigger cities in the southern part of Finland, there aren't so good Sami services for their children, and then there's also a sort of a threat that they lose their language, and it's in the long run very bad for the culture. But it's hard to fight against that. I guess that the only thing that we can do is to try to create a positive image that there is possibilities, and if you think about the reindeer herding, there is a possibility to continue the traditional livelihood, and also try to avoid massive big projects that might sort of threaten this idea, especially in the Sami homeland. But this is a very accurate and actual discussion going on here in Finland and in Lapland.
Thank you, Mika. We will return to you after a while. We continue then from the east. Not far east as we can. We could also be in Russia, but we are not there and today. But we are going to the far west, to the biggest settlement in Yukon territory, which is one of 3 regional Arctic territories in Canada, to Whitehorse, which is a town with about 25,000 inhabitants, as in my hometown. This is very far, so far that I think it's the time is now about 5:30 in the morning. So good morning to Alyssa Carpenter. You are a social worker in Western Arctic Youth Collective. Why is Arctic living problematic for your youths?
Vlami, so the question is, why is living in the Arctic a problem for youth?
Yes, in Whitehorse, or you can give us the report you will do.
Sure. So I live in Whitehorse, Yukon. It is in one of the 3 territories in what is called Canada. As a youth who grew up in an Arctic community in the Northwest Territories, what I've already heard and relate to is young people leave for opportunity. A lot of us are encouraged to pursue education, as our previous family has also really been impacted by forms of colonization and residential school that existed until I was a child. I'm someone who attended a day school in what is called Canada here as well, within my home territory of the Northwest Territories. But one big reason why I left was I was really encouraged to become educated. And I did have to leave my community, even though there is some options, certifications to start if that is what you want. For what I wanted to do, that didn't quite exist. A lot of the local or territorial options for me did not reflect what I wanted to do. So you're encouraged to travel and experience if you are able to leave your home community. Other reasons why I hear young people have left community is also because they experience lateral violence or another form of violence. The rates of violence in these Arctic communities is very high, with limited supports and resources to support them and who they are. Another big reason is we're a pretty fast growing demographic in this time. And housing options are not available to us. So interesting how it says homelessness. I would say it's more of a houselessness issue. We already see a huge numbers of a lack of housing, and then also quality of housing that exists in Arctic communities. And originally when they said, I live in Whitehorse, and I would more call it an urban northern city, but we are seeing a lack of housing infrastructure to accommodate this growing population of urbanization here. The cost of housing as well is pretty insane. And the more north you go in these regions, the cost of living is higher. So for many young people, if you didn't leave to become educated and get a range of the opportunities to add to your experience and qualifications to live and thrive in your community, options are very limited. So it's also thinking and asking our communities to be very creative on how they support the development and capacity growing of young people who want to live or become educated and return to their communities. I think that's something that needs to be explored a lot more. And I'm speaking from experiences. I want to live in my home community. I had to create my own job that reflected what I really wanted to do and contribute to. And thinking very creatively on how that looks. And we're creating slowly jobs for other youth that really want to do the work that resonates with us. And it's mainly just creating space for other young people to have those experiences and to grow as a human and to give back in the ways that they see is really needed. So yeah, there's many different reasons that I see why youth leave communities and where there can be some possible avenues or to start the conversation on how we get young people to stay and thrive. And another big piece that because of this disruption of colonization and the pressure, we are seeing a decline within language retention and also culture and just knowledge of our region and the history even. So that is a big piece that is young people my age and younger, I think, is really feeling our responsibility to do. And it's very overwhelming when there aren't proper supports or the programming existed isn't reaching and is the young people who really want it, and being very inclusive of those who have left our respective regions. So it's a really interesting conversation that I think needs to really happen more.
Thank you, Alyssa. Just follow up with two issues. If I understand you right, when we listen to Mika, there is in Lapland there is a demographic problem. They're getting fewer and fewer. From your point of view, there is really there's not the demographic problems, but there are welfare problems or living conditions problems. Is that the right way to understand it?
It's part of it. I think living conditions and helping us live and thrive in our communities is a huge reality that impacts some of us leaving or not staying if we do try to come back in that way. That is living conditions is part of it, affordability, and just there's big issues with food security. And then again, I'm speaking from an Indigenous perspective, is we see lots of lateral violence as well between our demographics and with our older demographics as well. And I think it sometimes is infused by the history that is there. And there was some big news with uncovered graves as well within the genocide that existed in this country as well. So we're now seeing a big presence of younger people asking us to think very differently on how we support the likelihood of many Arctic and especially Indigenous populations. But living conditions, I think, is really paramount. Like in Whitehorse, I shared, I was like, even though it's an urban city, the cost of living here and thriving as a human, and if you're single, so imagine for a young family. I'm a young mom and I'm trying to be a student as well. I'm pretty close to barely holding on, but you do what you can, because pursuit of education is important, because I want to be in a role that can potentially be in decision making or influence or policy development, because I come from a community and was raised with that and raised with those values, and really believe that our community and we benefit from that and thriving. And some opportunities are coming that I don't think reflect of what our younger generation is wanting to see in our community and prioritized. So I think we're wanting to think differently behind resource extraction and other lines of development. We see that relationship a little bit more to what previous ancestors did too. So I think that is also there's a few pieces of it. Yeah.
Fine. Fine. We are now starting to get some questions from the audience. We take it after we have gone through the panels. A last issue from me in this time, Alyssa. From western part of Arctic, we are worrying about the very low birth rates. But the birth rates in your region is high. Why?
I see birth rates being high because many of us are very familiar with seeing young families. That's one of the reasons. I think that's very common. I get teased that my parents want to be grandparents very early. But another big piece that I see is sometimes a lack of proper sexual health education that is inclusive and updated. So that is a big piece with how communities are spread out and the options they have. And I think the mainstream information on how we share valuable, insightful details around sexual health education is really growing, but it is a lacked area. Another big piece is that we see sometimes a lack of safe sex options available too. And then another big piece is just, again, commenting on the housing situations, close families, overcrowding. But I think one thing is a lot of us are raised to see young families. I know my parents had me when they were teenagers. And that is a very common reality we see in our communities, especially if they don't see other areas of their life. I know some folks want to be parents at very young ages, which is totally their decision. Some want to choose education, some want to choose to leave. So I think that is just a value that I also have grown up seeing, and it's very accepted and totally okay. I have many young, amazing parents within my families and friends and circles. So, but it's still very common. But many of us are also choosing to wait later. So Depends on who you talk to. But yeah.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. We will come back to you after we have continued this dialogue. The last answer you mentioned a lot about values, culture. This is also very important for this discussions. Well, then we go to the east again, to my Arctic region, and to Bodø, which is a fast-growing, ultra-modern second city in Norwegian Arctic. It is the European Union culture capital, the first north of the Arctic Circle, we were told yesterday, where Charlotte Nyheim is leading the youth part of the culture capital. So, Charlotte, how do you understand and meet the Northern youth situation? Floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi. As you mentioned, I work as the youth coordinator for Bodø 2024. And in my job as the youth coordinator, my responsibility is to include the young people and make them feel a part of the project, not only in Bodø, but all over the county and in northern Norway. I have chosen to call the project Proud to be Young in Nordland and northern Norway. Our goal is to give the young generation a sense of pride and feel truly connected to their home place. We will also be working on providing the right tools for young people and attract them back to northern Norway, because as we know, a lot of young people, they move, and we see that they move to get an education, and after they have finished the education, they never come back. Why is that? What are we missing, and what are the criteria to make it happen that they want to come back? This is a key focus area in my project, and it is also a project that I will challenge the young people to figure out with me. Sveinung, do you want me to elaborate more, or?
I can thank you. I can put in some issues you could you can comment on. Because one is a logical continuation of what you said. We see in our Arctic region, Charlotte, that this is very in Norway. It's a very big region. But there are only three cities that are growing there, and that is your city, it's my city, and it's Tromsø. And you said that we are worrying about the people taking education, moving out, and don't come back, but they come back to these three cities. What do we see a type of very dramatic centralization? What is your opinion about that in this region?
Yes, as I said, my responsibility is not only my hometown of Bodø, as you call it, a big city. I will work hard to make sure that all the young voices are heard, no matter where they are from, and everyone is equally as important. And this is very important to me as well, as in the AHA project, as you all have heard of the band AHA. I can briefly tell you about the project. AHA was here in Bodø a couple of weeks ago to play in their new album as a film where they were filming all over the region. And I was responsible for the youth involvement in the project and the organization around it. There were as many as 10 young people who were so lucky that they got to be a part of the production. And they were production assistants, sound and light technicians, filmmakers, photographers, and much more with the production in AHA. These young people are left with an enormous amount of valuable skills and a memory for life. This project makes very clear what Bodø 2024 and the youth project stand for: capacity building, skills development, and sustainability. The young people can use this experience for so much more in life ahead, and they have connected friends to a large network, and they teach this competence also to other young people to the whole region. My point here is that I did not bring young people only from the big cities. I went out to the small places and the districts and headhunted young people into the project so that they can take home their valuable competence and experience to their hometown. And the fact that there is so much centralization in the largest cities, I don't think we can get away from that completely. But I think the perspective here must be that we have to focus more on the smaller places and include young people from all over Nordland and Northern Norway equality.
Yes, fine, and very interesting that you also mentioned in your introduction that people from more remote communities in your Arctic regions are lacking pride of living in Arctic communities, particularly if they have taken higher education. You have grown up in Bodø and you're living in Bodø, but what are these people telling you about why are they lacking pride of living in smaller communities in Northern Norway?
Why young people in the districts are proud to be? What were your question?
Yes, I wonder. You said that people in districts, we call her, are not proud of living in these communities when they're young, and I wonder. You have been grown up and living in one of the growing cities in Norway. You are heading a modern project, and I just wonder what is this youngsters telling you about their missing pride?
Okay, yeah. Why they are not proud to be from Northern Norway?
Yes, and from small communities in North Norway.
What they are telling me so far, I have only been in this job for 4 months, but the young people that I have talked to until now are telling me that they don't have any options when they are finished from the young school. They don't have anything to do on their free time. If you don't go to football or play in a band or normally activities that are organized, they don't have any offers for them who wants to paint, to be an artist, to learn how to take good photographs, to be a technician, to work on bigger productions. The young people that want to work on things that offers that are not very established in smaller places, they therefore move to bigger cities to learn and develop in their skills. So that's one of my main focus, that we have to figure out what are they missing, what do they want, and can we make this happen for them. They go to bigger places and they are missing what they need in their home place to develop.
Okay, thank you. And one last question for me. The population level in North Norway has been very dependent on immigration, international immigration. Now we see that this has stopped up, and the group with highest level of outmigration is young immigrants. Why is that so? Why are young immigrants moving from North Norway?
Good question. I think that very many of the young adults move away from Northern Norway because when they are over 25 years old, they only get digital education. So they have to be able, so they move to be able to go physically to school. No one in Nordland County, for example, over 25 have the offers to go physical to school. So they move to get a regular education and to meet people, to be on school, sit on a desk, meet a teacher, and can ask questions if they have anything they're wondering about, because they are already new to the country, may not speak Norwegian very good, and maybe they are not so good in technical or digital competence, and so they have to sit alone home every day to watch digital teaching. And I understand that can be very challenging. Everyone needs to have a meaning to every day, something to stand up to, someone who asks you, how has your day been? Someone you can lean on if you have any questions, and just someone you can eat lunch with and say good work today on your presentation or whatever it should be. The fact that everyone has an offer, something to do on their free time, both young and old. Everyone needs to feel mastered, proud, a sense of belonging, have good friends. All of this is connected, and this is something Bodø 2024 will work hard for, that the young people get the tools that they need to thrive and have a good life. So I think the main reason why they move away is because of the education and all the side effects that gets with not be able to go into school.
Thank you, Charlotte. And we will also return to you, I hope. Then we go further in the panel to the west again, to Greenland, to Nuuk, University of Greenland, and Qivioq Løvstrøm, also chair of the Human Rights Council in Greenland. In Greenland, we also know that 80 to 90% of the population is indigenous. So, Qivioq, where is Greenland in this picture we have heard now and in this demographic welfare picture?
Yes, thank you, Sveinung. My name is Qivioq Løvstrøm. It's a difficult name to pronounce, so I will just say it myself now. And Greenland is standing in a really fun spot, in an interesting spot as a researcher to look into. Thing is, we have 2/3 of the population are men, 1/3 are women. But if you look at the numbers, the women get higher grades during the whole education, from childhood on to when they become adults and go to higher education. And women are also the ones that actually choose to take the higher educations, while men usually take jobs early. Also because here in Greenland, our fishing industry is really important and it's our main industry. And you can earn a lot of money quite early if you become a good fisher. So that can also be part of the equation. But what is wrong with this photo, though, is despite having the higher grades, despite having the higher education, the unemployment rates among women is higher than among men. And you also see that when you look how we are divided into workplaces, the traditionally male or more dominant or more, as some people consider them, important jobs are taken by men, while women are usually in the service industry still, despite having higher and better education. So there is still a lot of that going on. So we have definitely taken patriarchy into ourselves when we were colonized, and we still have to get rid of that. We also look at the numbers. We have a higher fertility rate than Iceland and Denmark, but only by a little bit. And if you look at it historically, our fertility rate has fallen dramatically. And it actually goes really well with the numbers of our urbanization, because you can see the numbers that women living in the bigger cities are less likely to get pregnant, while women who live in the outer districts are the ones that get pregnant earlier. And you can see that in the outer district, your you have a 50% higher pregnancy rate and birth rate actually compared to Nuuk, for example. So just by looking at the numbers, you can see that the more urbanization we have here in Greenland, the less likely we are to produce more children. So there need to be some change. But I also see something else, and that is a lot of single women, single mothers that take their education now. So maybe they stopped for a while and now they're at university, taking care of their child or children at the same time as they're taking a higher education. So there is a new trend with that. So because of the urbanization and the lack of housing that we have heard from Alyssa, we have very, very similar problems in Greenland. And that has done that a lot of young people who have the education, who have all the qualifications needed, actually choose to remain in Denmark. In the last 10 years, Greenlandic-born Greenlanders that have moved to Denmark and live in Denmark have increased by 5,000. And it could be numbers that could increase, because if we don't have a place to put our children, if we don't have the infrastructure for it, and if we don't have a place to live ourselves, even though there's a job available, we can't take the job. And that is something that I see a lot of. And it's not only to Denmark that people move. I know quite a lot of people who have moved to Canada because there's Inuit there that they can relate to. So it's a problem we need to really focus on and do something about, because the lack of proper housing is a huge problem in Greenland. Otherwise, we have when you look at the gender imbalance, even though I just said that women are the ones getting the higher education and not getting all of the jobs that they wanted, you see that the boys are not getting empowered. We have the highest suicide rates for boys here in Greenland. So we need to do something about that. We among Indigenous people have the highest suicide rates in the world. So a lot of us have actually gone around and said, if we treated suicide as we did COVID-19, so many lives would have been saved, because we lose someone very often. Any Greenlandic person you meet, they will have known 5 people who have committed suicide or more, myself included. So we have really high numbers and we need to do something about it. And that is something where we need to create proper framework for people to live. So there's a lot of things that needs to be set in motion. A lot of things have already been set in motion, but we need to click it all together and make it make sense, because otherwise we can keep having these problems with these young boys just disappearing too early. So we have social problems like any other former colonized country, and we really need to acknowledge that. And that is one of the things that we need to work on in Greenland as well. So there's a lot of different components into it, but Greenland has acknowledged all of these things. So even if you look at the Naalakkersuisut, the government of Greenland, the first thing they said when they took office was they were going to focus on the people, on the human component. Because if we don't focus on the human component, we can't do anything here. It's the community that keeps us alive. So we need to keep doing work together. And I think it's very important that we learn from each other as well, that I can listen to what Alyssa does and what you do in other parts of Scandinavia, so that we can learn from each other, because I'm sure that some of us have made some mistakes we don't want others to repeat.
Yes, thank you very much. So what I maybe you could comment on a bit on this. As I understand you, this is not about pride of living in Greenland, but people or young people move from Greenland often to Denmark because of better living condition in Denmark, better opportunities.
Sometimes it's about survival. It's not even young people anymore. You see old people. That's why we have a lot of homeless Greenlandic people that live in the streets in Copenhagen. Copenhagen people know them very well and treat them in a specific way because they have always associated them with social problems. So it's not only young people, but it is a huge problem we have in Greenland that we don't have the proper infrastructure to take care of our people.
Yes. One last comment and question. 80 to 90% of the population in Greenland is indigenous people. But is there some difference between indigenous and not indigenous in this population? As I understand it, maybe I could listen that you could see a further marginalization among indigenous people than on the other. What is your opinion about that?
Well, it is historic that the relations have been like what the Danish would like to call a father-son relationship to Greenland, where they would send some of their best people here to work and to help make the framework for how Greenland should become a new government by itself and so on. And this has been going on for half a century, I guess, a little more than that. But the thing is, when you have that kind of structure and you send people and they're the ones in power, and you start to see that there's a pattern that you see with the business people here as well. They're white. The people who earn the most money, they're white. The people in the higher positions anywhere in the government usually don't look like I do. So and the usual answer is that yes, the policy is that they're going to hire a Greenlandic person with the right qualification, and they're going to hire them first, or they're going to prefer them over a Danish person. But there's always a reason for choosing the Danish person instead. The problem is that most of these Danes, even though they're fantastic at their job and they're really good at it, they have a hard time integrating into Greenlandic society. It's not only their fault, it's also Greenlandic society, because we have experienced it so often that someone comes, stays for a year or two, earn a lot of money, and then leave again. So people kind of close off because you don't want to become best friends with someone who just leaves. So there's a lot of different ways that we can work on retaining these fantastic people who come to help us, because that's what they do. But we also need to ensure that the people that we actually have in our own population, that they get the opportunity to get the jobs.
Fine, and thank you to you, Qivioq, Løvstrøm. We hope we return to you. Go to the last person in this dialogue, to the mid-Arctic and to the Faroe Islands, and to Birgitta Matras Petersen. You are, I think, student leader at the University of Faroe Islands. My impression so long is that your youths could confirm many of the characteristics of the other previous regions, but there are also some characteristics, I think. So the space on Zoom is yours, Birgitta.
Yes, thank you very much for having the opportunity to join this or participate in this youth panel, and it's very interesting to listen to other people, other young people's perspectives on their region. The Faroese society is a small-scale society, and we have a history without migration, especially to Denmark, and mainly for educational purposes and also for work. So this is something that has been ingrained in the Faroese culture for a very long time. However, outmigration is often considered as contemporary and as a way to gain knowledge or experience abroad and bring this back to the Faroe Islands. However, 10 years ago, there was a discussion about the declining population in the Faroe Islands and young people leaving and not coming back. And this resulted in the government and also the private sector and also individuals. They decided to change this trend, and therefore strategies were formulated and campaigns were launched. And today, I think we can say that the picture is very different. We can see that many people return. I returned. I came back to the Faroe Islands and settled here and started my education here. And we have a population growth with 11% since 2012. So it's the biggest in Europe. So it's something to celebrate. And I think that we can say that, I mean, since 2012, that's not a very long time ago, but we have invested in education and providing more possibilities, and also in the quality of education, something that's very important for the Faroese young people. And also we have a highly developed infrastructure. We have a high mobility, so it's easy to participate in the labor market, to get to the university, which is located in the capital. From my own perspective, I live in Klaksvík, which is an hour drive from Tórshavn today, with subsea tunnels and a developed infrastructure. Whereas in 2005, it would take you approximately 2 hours. So I think the change is very swift, I would say. And also something that we can celebrate is that education, vocational education, and also higher education is free, and it's equal opportunities regardless of income or gender or location and so forth. But however, being a small country, we are always in competition with the outside world, and we need to continuously ensure that people have interest to return back to the islands, or stay for that matter. And to ensure this, we need to listen to the youth perspective, their preferences a lot, or our preferences. And in terms of education, in terms of employment, economic, and also political development. For the young people, they're the ones that will shape the future. So to create a sustainable development in opportunities, I think it's very important that we provide more opportunities in education, and that's what the young people want, and that's I mean the main cause of outmigration, or the reason of outmigration. And also we need to ensure a high quality education, and also establish a healthy and inspiring student environment, something that I think young people here in the Faroe Islands are missing, a more sustainable community for everyone, and something that will inspire everyone. And also in terms of housing, the housing issue, a lot of people cannot afford the rent. It's very high, and it's hard to enter the housing market. So I suggest that we or we work on developing or in improving the housing issue, and also providing low-cost student accommodation. And also from my own perspective, the last point that I will make here is that we work on developing our infrastructure, including telecommunication, that ensures easy access to education and also work. So yes, that's.
Thank you, Birgitta. Also some small questions to you. You told us now about this very strong population growth in the Faroe Islands, the strongest in Europe. I didn't know that. That's also very interesting to have. But what I did know was that the Faroe Islands has the highest birth rates in the Arctic regions. I also thought, as I know, that that this was due to that there's the returned migrants from Denmark, for instance, the women that are returning go into more traditional ways of life when they're returning, and then also it's one impact of that is children and so on. Is that correct? Or if it is correct, will that also be the future, or is this a sustainable pattern for the future?
Well, yes, partly that's correct. I mean, the Faroe Islands is a very family-based, we are family-based individuals. And what we see now, as you mentioned, that females are returning after completing their degree or education abroad. They come back and they want to start families here. And it's true that we have a very high fertility rate, being the highest in the Arctic region and also in Europe, being 2.3. That's according to the newest statistics here in the Faroe Islands, which means that we exceed the replacement levels, which is 2.1, I believe. So that's something. So it's very true that this is the case. You asked me about being traditional. That is partly true, but I think I would say that it's possible to do both, to develop or to work on your career as a woman, and enter the labor market with the high mobility that we have. There's been very much research done in the Faroe Islands in terms of mobility. So it's easy for females to do both in a way. And I think one of the reasons as well that young people want to come back or stay here and start families is that we have a sense of security here. People feel secure, and we also have very strong family relations. And so you always have your family to help you if the system is not there. But also on a more structural level, I would say that we have modern institutions, and in terms of paternal leave, we have good possibilities. So I mean, it's good opportunities to start a family here, and that might be a reason why people are interested in starting a family. And also, so something I would like to mention is that although this is the case that the birth or the first fertility rate is high, we are always in competition with other countries. And here I think especially of paternal equality, where we here in the Faroe Islands, we women are often perceived as the I would say the main carer, or the primary carer, whilst the male is often considered as the breadwinner. So we are always in competition with other countries in terms of equal parenting, and something that we should promote men's participation in parenting. And also something I would like to add is that it might be financially difficult for lone parents to raise or for lone parent families to be in the Faroe Islands. And this might be a reason why people choose to go elsewhere. And also in terms of LGBT rights, equal rights. So that's so in general, I would say that we have good opportunities in regard to our structures, in terms of parental leave, and we have modern institutions, And obviously, as I said, the family is also a factor.
Yes, and very short last comment from me is that the worrying in the Faroe Islands about the level of returned migrants from Denmark is not there any longer. The return migrants is coming now back to Faroe Islands. Is that right?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yes, you was telling in the introduction that I understand as you had been worrying about the level of return migration from Denmark, but you are not that any longer.
No, I wouldn't say that we are worried about this. I think what I would like to put emphasis on in terms of that question is that people have difficulties to enter the housing market. So you can see people looking for a place to live, and it's living in stressful conditions. So I think what's important in terms of people returning back is that we provide housing possibilities, and also creating possibilities in terms of the labor market, in terms of employment. But however, as I mentioned, I think education is something that we should really definitely focus on, providing more possibilities for young people, and really put emphasis on that.
Thank you, and I'm complete agreeing with you with the last as a university leader. Yes, we have some minutes left. I have got some questions. Let me see if I can take them up here. Let me see here. Yes, here I can see, but I think I should start with the beginning. Yes. I will not maybe take here is a comment from pt5. There is also difference between genders. Women have no tendency to get higher education, and they are more willing to move to outer areas. I think that is an important pattern in almost the eastern part of Arctic. And there is a thank for the Alyssa for a very interesting presentation. I agree on that. Let me see here if there was some question here. Yes, maybe I take one about employment or unemployment in the north. What is then the situation in public sector compared with the private sector? Is there a preference amongst job seekers or return migrants? Where will they go, to the private sector or to the public sector? And there are some comments about housing market. I think there was one question, and that was about the public versus the private sector. Can you in the panel that would comment that, raise a hand so I can give you the word to you? Is there any comments there? Yes, Mika.
I think that in Lapland this phenomena is quite equal. I mean that there are huge lack of labor force in both sides, both in private and then also in public sector. Mainly, but they are a little bit different, because in the public sector they usually the jobs they are permanent. But for example, in the tourism sector they are season like in the winter time. So they are a little bit different phenomena, but both sectors need new employees desperately, and one of the interesting phenomena is that inside the private sector, for example, in the tourism sector, most of the people who have been employed are foreigners. People from actually, I just talked with one of the big tourist companies here in Rovaniemi, and the most distant place that his worker has been is from Brazil, and actually he recruited over 60 people in this winter season, and over 50 of them is abroad. And this job-based immigration is actually one big phenomena that we are trying to take into account, because we are not competing against other regions in Finland. Actually, besides Helsinki area, there's in every place the same situation. The demographics are going very low, and we are competing against each other. So we are looking very much abroad.
Thank you, Mika. And then I think we go to the audience in Brussels. Can someone take the governing of that audience? Yes, and maybe first Qivioq could also comment this. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just really quickly answer the one about that now that women are getting the higher education, that they're moving.
Yes.
It's not actually the higher education that makes them move. Usually it's because that they don't have a place to have their kids, because no matter, at the moment, no matter what your education is, you can kind of get a job anywhere. People need someone. But the thing is, if you don't have daycare options, you have to move to a place that have them. And we don't have many daycares here anymore because the buildings haven't been taken care of enough, so some of them are decaying. So that is actually the main thing. It's housing and infrastructure. So that's why when Birgitte was talking, I was like nodding quite along, and I was getting really excited to hear about how they were retaining and getting all the people back. And when she said infrastructure and the mobility part, it made me really excited. So that is what we need, and we need to look at the Faroe Islands, I guess. When it comes to youth unemployment, we don't have a lot of youth unemployment in Greenland, actually. We have a lot of different jobs that they can have. But I wanted to say, when it comes to the private sector versus the public sector, usually the first job is in the public sector, because they're always looking for someone. And then you can be stable for 2 or 3 years until you realize that this is boring. And I know a lot of people who then became independent and started doing their own work and made their own businesses. So it's a hybrid. There's some of them who even does it after the other work and get a B income. So the job market and the different sectors in Greenland are getting more and more fluid, I guess. And also because some of the main thing that does that, that the public sector can't really get the young people anymore is they used to have this thing where if you took the job for the government, you would have housing with it as well. And that was something people wanted. Like that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work for the government, but then they stopped doing it. So now I don't work for the government. So you can see, like, because housing is so important in Greenland. If you can't get a place to live, then you have to move to Denmark to teach at that university instead of this university. So housing is extremely important because jobs, they're here.
Fine, very good. And then we go to the audience in Brussels. Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Yes? Right. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, considering the time. And thank you very much also for all of your presentations. I would like to take advantage of currently being in Belgium, that is a non-Arctic country, to ask you, how do you see the place of an apparent growing interest and implication regarding of the non-Arctic youth to the region, and how do you see future relationships between those living in the Arctic and those not living in the Arctic? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, please raise your hands. It's about how to encourage non-Arctic to move to the Arctic regions and the relations between, for instance, you and others. So who will comment that? We had I think we have 4 minutes to go. We are in the break, but I could get 5 minutes more. They were saying yes.
No problem.
So comments to that? Yes, Qivioq again. Yes.
Qivioq. Yeah, but I can very shortly just answer. We don't have that problem. People want to come to Greenland. So people are very interested in Greenland. We don't have to advertise anymore. Trump did it for us, I guess. So we are very fortunate that people are very interested in us. And we also have the new Arctic Hub here in Greenland. So we have a lot going on, but in different ways of research, but also because there's more interest in doing film work. So culturally, there's also a lot more going on. And of course, there's a lot more interest in Indigenous people. People talk about Indigenousness more now. So it's more acceptable for us to claim our indigeneity now. So there's a lot more that we can do now to include ourselves into the world and to include the world to Greenland. So we don't actually, I don't foresee a problem.
We have Alyssa here, but before Alyssa, I challenging Charlotte. You are heading an European Union project. What are Brussels? What are the European Union saying about the cultural capital north of the Arctic Circle? Do you?
Oh, what was the question?
The question was that you are heading the European Union project in Bodø, north of the Arctic Circle, and I was asking you about what is the Europeans saying to you as a leader of this youth project? You are meeting non-Arctic people in the project.
What they are saying about
what they are saying to you? Yes.
Yeah, I don't have met many people that have that are not Arctic. I have discussed this team with yet, but my impression is that they think that the northern Norway is cold. It's they are living a lot of reindeers and ice bears, and they don't understand all the possibilities that are here. And that is something we have to work on, changing the image that also the youth that have grown up in the northern Norway want to come back when they go to study, but also the youth around in Norway and all of Europe, that we make us more attractive by making more possibilities here, and that they want to come here and move here. I don't know if I would call it a fun fact or something sad, but I read in the newspaper here a couple of months ago that a girl from the capital Oslo in Norway wanted to move to a little island right outside Bodø. It's called Træna. And the doctor thought she was mentally ill because she wanted to move here in northern Norway to a little island, and that's not good. So we have to change the image. We have to make people understand in all over Norway and in Europe that we are a great region with a lot of possibilities. Of course, we can build up more and be more attractive, but we have to change the image.
Yes, and you have a really important work there. The last speaker from the panel is Alyssa. So please, Alyssa.
Hi, yeah. So just on that last question. I think there is now, speaking from someone who is Indigenous and from an Arctic community, I see a lot more sometimes opportunity and retention to invite folks who are not from these Northern or Arctic communities because they have the education. They also are helped more and prioritized sometimes with housing options. So kind of agreeing with what's already been shared briefly, relating a lot to what our speaker from Greenland is saying, is we see that. For myself, I do a lot of relationship building between Indigenous and non-Indigenous and folks who live in from Northern Arctic and non-Arctic communities, because even though internationally Canada is considered an Arctic country, there's a big difference from someone who grows up in a Southern community versus a Northern community. And there's also even a difference from a youth who grows up in a remote, isolated, rural community versus a community like I'm in that would be called the North. We're seeing this huge influx within these urban northern cities because what our communities need a lot of time are key public roles that are filled with folks who've just recently graduated, whether it's teaching, nursing, policy development. So what a big challenge though is even though they have that education, they do not have the relationship or the understanding of the context or the culture within the community. And as noted as well, there is this big presence to learn a bit more of the accurate history and ongoing forms we see and how colonization has still, you see those impacts intergenerationally. So our younger generation is growing up breaking these really much needed cycles that we see. So, but a big piece that we do as Northern Arctic youth is advocate for space for us to exist and thrive. And whether we're women, whether we're gender diverse, whether we're a single parent or a young family, childcare, supporting us and thriving and allowing us to be who we are in our communities is still, we're still not there yet in my eyes, from conversations I have with young people. Sometimes young people also leave because they want to feel safer. Our community are small and some beliefs still exist around some folks and realities. So, but infrastructure, definitely one of the biggest areas. And just the comment on the youth employment opportunities. A lot of us want jobs that reflect what we really want to do. And we don't always want entry-level positions that tend to be offered in public governments. So being very creative and also earlier. So say you're a student who is wanting to go home during your summer break or spring break, and you want to work for your community. Those jobs tend not to be offered immediately because we're dependent on public resources to make them available. And then comes, where are they going to be housing? Are they going to make at least a living wage that reflects those northern communities and the cost of living? Those are really big pieces that are lacked because folks with, I would say, need a bit more input to develop that from those northern communities and perspectives. So lots of comments on that. There's lots of work to be done from my perspective in what's called Canada.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to all. Yes, there are, as you're saying, Alyssa, a lot of work to be done and a lot of things to be discussed. I'm very glad for this panel, and I'm really proud of the speeches here. I think you have given very much to the audience and to the table. So again, I'm sorry, 10 minutes into your coffee break in Brussels, but we handle that, all of us. So thank you.
Mr. Eikeland, you can be proud of the panel. There was a very interesting discussion. Thanks to you and all the panelists for sometimes deep and emotional discussion and exchange on the problems that the Arctic region might and is meeting when it comes to youth and demographics. And I understand housing is one of the key things to be tackled. I would like now to take we offered gladly, Mr. Eikeland, 10 minutes of our time, of course. We still have 20 minutes before we get into the next panel. discussion. The next panel discussion will be with Mrs. Fraga on resilience. So we reconvene at 3:15 sharp. Thank you.